Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Kenny Conversation, brought to you by JEGS, the leader in high-performance aftermarket car parts. Remember to go to jegs.com for everything you need to fix your everyday vehicle up or even your hot rod. You're looking at him, a longtime friend of mine. We did a lot of racing together, and he is a two-time NASCAR Xfinity champion, Randy LaJoie. Randy, how you doing, buddy?
In the house, Herman. Man, can't wait to get talking.
Well, listen, you have made world news, and I called you and I said, let's celebrate this. Lately here, you made big news because you were put on the ballot for the 2026 NASCAR Hall of Fame. What does that make you feel like?
It gives me goosebumps just saying that. It's what an honor. I mean, at the end of the day, when we started doing all this racing stuff and wherever we were racing, whatever part of the country, you sure didn't think you were doing it to be in the Hall of Fame. And now to get nominated for this, it's pretty darn humbling, that's for sure.
There's so much to talk about, and we're going to get to it all. I have a method to my madness, but let's talk about you just a little bit. Let's celebrate you. I do this with all the great drivers. I'm going to tell you how great you are, and then when we're done, I want you to answer. So, Randy LaJoie from Norwalk, Connecticut, 63 years old. Randy is a two-time NASCAR Xfinity champion, 1996, 1997. 15 wins. This is a big one here. 118 top 10s. 1985 NASCAR North champion. Danbury Fair Race Arena champion. Modified Sportsman champion. 1997, 99, and 2001. New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame. And then, of course, the big one in 2023, NASCAR voted you as one of the 75 greatest drivers. Now, that's not all, Randy. You made 350 Xfinity starts, 44 Cup races, 7 truck races, for a total of 401 total NASCAR starts. Now, as I read all that off to you, that's a lifetime of achievement. What do you think about?
Well, you read the numbers and you lose more than you win. But I did have an opportunity to win, and it was wonderful. And, every series I went to, I really enjoyed the Busch Series, which is today the Xfinity Series, which is totally different than it was. I happened to be watching the Dale Jr. download with him and the Todd Bodine, the Onion. And,
Me too.
Yeah, he and Dale Jr. was very complimentary of the Busch Series in the late '90s. Mid to the late '90s, it was amazing time to be in NASCAR because I tell people you don't understand. They built a lot of grandstands in the '90s, and every weekend was a spring break weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to talk to you about something that it seems like a silly controversy to me, and I guess it just marks its era. But, when we have years like 1996, 97, 98, that's how I define racing by the year. Some people, Randy, make this big deal out of like, well, that was the Busch Series days. And then I respond to them, hold on, we had Nationwide too. And now we have Xfinity. To me, Randy, it's all the same. It's just a different sponsor. What is your take on that?
It is the same, but the difference where we both have seen coming up in the '90s was the quality of the ownership groups. Hell, when we raced, when you were with Phil Maher, I was with CC. Went over to Bumgardner at base. There were so many owners in the Busch Series It was awesome. I mean, but now everything's kind of got refined to that's the Cup Light Series, and because of the Cup teams, and that's one of the things people didn't realize when we raced against the Cup guys, they were into similar equipment than we were. Nobody had
Yeah.
engineers. Nobody had, we were all the same, and it has changed for sure. I say mid 2000s.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with you. When we were racing, Dale Earnhardt Sr., Harry Gant, uh, all the big boys,
That
they,
darn that darn
they,
Win Dixie car.
yeah, it was just a lower level. There was no engineering involved, and there's no doubt. I agree with you 110%. Nowadays, we got major cup teams, which are, that it was much more of a level playing field back then. Okay, let's stop there for a minute and let's talk about your early beginnings. I want to paint the picture, and I want to help get you into 2026 NASCAR Hall of Fame. Man, you're a gangster. I mean, you are a grinder. You work your butt off. Let's go back to your early days in Norwalk, Connecticut. Now, I read everything. It says you started out as a go-kart racer. Let's go back home, Randy. Tell me about your early beginnings.
Well, I mean, my dad was a racer, so we came from a racing family. I had an older brother. Uh,
I never knew. What was his name?
Ronnie.
I'll be darned.
But I lost him. We lost him when he was
Mm,
17. I was 15.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
and he was, it's amazing to me when Corey turned 17, it was like I was looking at my brother. And talented, could build anything. I mean, it was amazing how smart he was and this and that. And hopefully I got some of that from after he passed, but him looking over me, uh, because it didn't matter before every started a race, before every restart. I always carried a rosary bead in my pocket, and I would say a little prayer and say, "Come on, guys, let's go for a ride." And
Yeah.
it was fun.
I like you saying that because when I race my dirt car, I have a picture in my car. It's a decal. I put it in every new car I get. It's my mom and my dad and me as a child. And people say, "Is that your dad?" I said, "Yeah, that reminds me why I race." And I say a little prayer too. Did you find that when you would say those little prayers that would calm your nerves a little bit?
Yeah, it just put me back to square one. It brought you into a zone. It just made you focus a whole lot more. Uh, After I did that, I just did that my whole career, and
Yeah.
you know, I think I'm not sure what happened to the rosary beads, but I should have gave them to my kid because he could use them.
Hey, I hate to do this. I, you know, I do love you because we've done a lot together. And when I say I love people, it means I care about them. What happened to your brother? Do you, can I ask that?
Yeah, hell, he was 17. He just built himself a Mach 1 Mustang. Just built the motor himself. Just put tires on it. Just did the whole thing. I remember the night like it was yesterday. And we're at my dad's junkyard, and he's getting ready to go out for the night. And we're talking. He goes, "Hey, how's school doing?" I says, "It does okay," because we went to different schools. He
Yeah.
goes, "Just remember," he says, "how many friends you got?" I said, "I don't know." He goes, "You never have enough." He goes, "Be nice to everybody." And that's pretty much the last thing he said to me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
The
I re-
streetcar wreck. Him and
yeah.
I don't know if they were racing or whatever, but him and his buddy, there was three of them in his car. Uh, his passenger passed, the kid in the back seat. They did get him out. So it was, and the worst thing was the address of the accident was 711 Main Street.
Mm,
Well, 7-Eleven's been in my family forever. That was my dad's racing number.
mm,
So it's crazy how the numerology game works in this business.
right. Well, I'm sure that had to affect you. Um, I know my brother Mike lost his 2-year-old child, and I know, whenever you go through that, I'm really sorry, Randy, but that also helps paints a picture of your early beginnings. So your dad was a racer, your brother was smart, you loved him. You go through that tragedy, and when did you first get into racing? How did you drive your first race car?
Well, back in those days, you had to be 18 years old.
Right.
You couldn't jump in a car when you were 12. I mean, that's what go-karts were for. So I go-kart raced. Matter of fact, the same place where Parker Kligerman started, an all go-kart club down at the beach.
Be darned.
I think they still are racing there. But so when I turned 18, my dad said, "Hey, I bought he has a junkyard. So somehow he ended up with a race car, a repossessed race car. He goes, hey, if you want to use that thing, it's outside over there. Go get it, rebuild it over the winter. You're old enough, the beginning of the year, you could start." Okay. And that's what I did. And, me and a bunch of guys from school will work on the car. My dad, he's a multi-time champion at Danbury. Him and his guys will work on his car. The other part of the shop, me and my guys will hang out and do what 18-year-olds do. And,
Mhm.
after about halfway through the season, my dad comes and goes, hey, have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? It's like, no. And he says, okay, we'll help you. So they spent a lot of time, went over stuff that I didn't know nothing about. And my dad says, I'll take your car out Saturday night and I'll try it. I said, okay. First practice, he jumps in it, runs it around, a couple tenths quicker than I was.
Yeah.
Comes in, he says, give me a paper. Well, he gives me a list a mile long of what I needed to fix. But I remember him saying, you could probably run this place wide open.
Oh my.
And I was like, that's all I heard. I said, okay. And my turn. I jumped in, pull on the track. Last thing I remember was, you could probably run this place wide open. 1 and 2 wide open. Coming out of 4, sideways, hell, it looked like a Daytona wreck. I overcorrected it and I stuffed it in the fence. I mean, it took the right front, shoved it into the motor. And I was like, I can see the start-finish line. I almost made it wide open. Well, my dad's division, we were the sportsman cars. My dad's the modifieds. They were in the lineup chute getting ready to pull out. Well, they ended up getting them out of the chute because they had to stop the event to fix the fence. So my dad come in and got out of the car. He says, man, somebody clean that fence out. And they said, go check your kid's car. So he come over, he goes, what happened? I said, I didn't make it, Pop. He says, you didn't make what? I said, I couldn't do wide open all the way. That's as far as I made it. He's like, oh boy. So that year was interesting. I ended up winning one feature. And they were like 15 lap races. That's all we were allowed to run back then. Well, the next year they brought them up to 20 lap races.
Mm.
I think we won 13 out of 20.
Oh boy.
The point championship, and it ballooned up after that. Because once you have a season like that, people start looking at you. They start calling you. They say, okay, let's go do something else. And terrible that the Danbury closed down. So at the end of my championship year, they closed it down to build a shopping mall. So we had to look at some other tracks, which thank God in a couple hours away, we had Stafford. We would go to Stafford on Friday night. Saturday night was New London, Connecticut. And hell, I raced 2 nights a week, just having a great time. And at the New London track, the promoter, old Dick Williams, they had the old NASCAR North guys come in. at a special event. So the NASCAR North guy, Tom Curley, the director, asked the promoter, he goes, "Hey, you got anybody we could put in this house car? You know, let them run, bring people in, you know, so people can watch them, your local guy." He goes, "Yeah, we got this kid doing a good job." Well, you know, they put me in the car. It was old C.A. Crouch's car, Robbie Crouch's dad. Robbie's a legend up there in New England, great race car driver. And went into his dad's car, qualified well. I think within 10 laps, I was leading. Well, it was a 150 lapper.
Wow.
And I think it was lap 50. I think I got lapped for the second time. I was like, what the heck? I mean, it's the first time in a full body car. So at the end of the race, I am slap wore out. You know, I didn't have my style seat in the car. I had a standard seat. So I was trying to stay in the car first. But after the race, the old C.A. Crouch, just like the Days of Thunder, he goes, "Randy, I can tell you what happened." I said, "Okay, what happened, C.A.?" You know, I wanted to tell him what happened. "Yeah, your car's no good." He says, "You were driving the car too fast through the corners." Well, it took me a long time to realize, boy, that man was right. So, I mean, that opened the door. That opened that door to that NASCAR North stuff. Because at the time, my dad and Bob Johnson, local crew chief up there, and Ronnie Bouchard's crew chief, were partners in a Speedway modified. And they had it sitting there, and he says, "You know, I think I could take that old Speedway modified, take the body off, put a different body on it, and we could race that in this NASCAR North." And that was 82, 83, 82. And we went to Dover and loved it. I had the best time. I think we finished fourth. And that was neat. From what that guy did to me at New London to get me to switch up to the NASCAR North. And then we went NASCAR North racing, 83, 84, and 85. Won the 85 championship. And I really thought we were going to just keep that trajectory going. But then again, there was a big lawsuit over the championship. I think we won it. NASCAR was on my side. The second place guy took everybody to court. And it took a couple, 3 years to get the thing out of court and give me my championship ring. I think I got my championship ring 3 years later. And in that, it put the kibosh. The partners I was with, they got all pissed off, and they stopped racing. So from 85 to 88, I didn't do a whole lot of racing.
Let's slow our roll right there. I want to let you know I read that, and I thought I'm not going to bring that up. Just, you know, people sue each other every day, and it's, you know, it's just nasty. But when I listen to you as a racer, and us Wallaces, and I think the LaJoies are similar. It seems to me like you guys made chicken salad out of chicken. You were I'm listening to you say Bob Johnson said I can make this car into this car. I mean, was it like that with the LaJoie family? You made do with. I mean, you were fabricators. You worked. Is that the way you were brought up?
Yeah, absolutely. And being brought up in a junkyard.
That's it. Yep.
We had every competitor, you know, always coming down for Lincoln uppers. We would have Chrysler lowers. And back in those days, you could still use a lot of stuff from out back and on the race cars, whether it was the hubs and stuff like that. Leaf Springs was my first car. But we did pretty much everything ourselves. And we definitely, we made a pretty good chicken salad a few times.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we've painted the picture, everybody. We know about Randy's early beginnings He's gone through some sad times. He was winning. And let's listen, I read and I know everything about you, but let's just skip right here, Randy. Let's go to 1985. You go to a cup race in Atlanta. Bob Johnson owns the car. Now tell me if I got this right. The great Bob Johnson, he was Ronnie Bouchard's crew chief when they won the cup race at Talladega. That Bob Johnson, right? Number 47, right?
Yeah, Raceville Farms. Yeah, Bob is a master mechanic from Connecticut. He had his purple number 17 modified, was one of the fastest in New England with Richie Evans and Jeff Bodine and guys Bugsy Stevens, Freddie DeZero. They had to beat that 17 car for Bob Johnson's, that purple car. He was just a mastermind of. He would watch the car and tell me what was wrong with it.
I love those. I love those crew chiefs.
Yeah, and if I would explain something to him, he goes, "Well, it doesn't look like that. It looks like this." Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a very smart racer.
Okay, so Bob Johnson put you in his Winston Cup car, I believe. 1985, Bob Johnson put you in his Winston Cup race car. You go to Atlanta, you start 16th and you finish 14th. Tell me about this.
Yeah, it was. I've never been, to Dover. Yeah, we had gone to Dover, and they were saying, "We can go down to Atlanta." Okay, so we go down there, we qualify. Well, one of the worst things that happened that day was as we were going, my legs start to tingle.
Mm.
During the race, what the heck? I'm starting to have trouble feeling the clutch pedal. Don't use a lot of brake there in Atlanta. And I pit stops, I'm trying to get the clutch down. And what the heck is going on? Well, come to find out, my old tub fiberglass seat that we had, the gentleman that my dad got to manufacture them, every one was always a little bit smaller. Well, and then I was getting a little bit bigger. Well, it had pinched the nerves in my legs that cut the blood flow off. So the end of the race, I said, guys, I mean, we probably could have run top 10. And that was a great day. I mean, sit there racing with these guys. And I remember going, and I think I'm fast. Because no windows, a lot of wind. Okay, and you're hauling butt in Atlanta. And I think I am the fastest thing out there. And all of a sudden, hey, here comes the leaders. Get the passing flag. And Cal Yard will come by me in a Hardy's car. And I thought he was fighting inside the car. Oh, he would. And I was like, maybe that's why he's leading. Because I was a whole lot more comfortable. And I was like, okay, I better get after it because that sucker sure is. And it taught me a lesson that, if you think you're good, there's always somebody better.
Yeah. When I was reading up on your career, I started knowing you, 89, 90. I had no idea that you had started in Cup. And I think that's very telling. Okay, so we're just going to go like this. 1987, 1989, you're grinding. And I call you a grinder. I've always known you as a grinder. You're a never give up person. But you go you go back to race for Frank Cece, and this is kind of where I know you. So we've gotten Randy's career right now to basically, if you all want to say Busch Series, even though you were in Cup, 85.
Only once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I find amazing. And follow this, everybody. 1985 Winston Cup race. You finished 14th. That's 85. Now, 86, 87, 88, 89. You're doing your deal, okay? And you're in your car. You're out of your car. And that's what I read. raced with Frank Cece, then went back to your own car. Tell me about what I call that. You know, you're great now. You're one of the best now. But tell me about that dead period in your racing career. What was going on right there?
Well, I mean, I had thought once we did that Atlanta deal
Yeah.
that we would run a bunch more. It was Bob, two partners, and you know that the lawsuit was going on. We're trying to win the championship. You know, after '85,
Yeah.
and from '85 to '88, it was all, and it turned the guys off on racing.
Yeah.
And I think Bob went elsewhere. Bob got a great job to go with Race Hill Farms, I do believe, with Harry
Oh, yeah.
Gant and Ronnie Bouchard. So you know he moved on. He moved south. Uh, I didn't do a whole lot. You know, a couple short track stuff. I didn't know what was going on. Get married, '88. You know, not doing a lot. I go to Pocono just to go hang out. It's a couple hours from the house. And as I'm walking around Pocono talking to everybody, Jimmy Spencer. I'm talking with Jimmy. He's a junker. They got a junkyard. We're going back and forth. I rented one of his cars to go to Dover and race and did well. Uh, he said, "Hey, Randy," he says, "I'm leaving Frank and I'm going to drive full-time Cup." He says, "Frank's going to need a driver." He said, I'll put a good word in for you." It's okay. So I called Frank the following week and I said, "Frank, you need a driver? Can I help?" And he said, "Sure." And he says, "Here's my shop. Go down there. I'll hire you $300 a week and I'll let you drive my car." So I went back to the old junkyard. I said, "Hey, Dad, I got an opportunity to move south here," and talked to the wife. And I said, "I want to try this. I want to go down there and see." It was 6 months after I was married, and I packed my car and I moved south. My wife stayed up top. She still had jobs and this and that. She had to come down and find us a place to live, and we got hooked up with Frank. First race out was Hickory, run second.
Yeah.
Second race, I think, was Talladega, run second, and it just went from there. And you know, then the reality set in. The end of the year, somebody come in with more money.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Randy. He says you can continue to work on the cars, but I got a different driver. Okay. So what do you do?
Right. So let's stop right there for a minute. We're painting this picture, and now everybody is understanding why I call you a grinder, a never give up person. I want to talk about that. It was very famous when I, moved to Charlotte. And it's simple. It's called "We're Going South." Whether you were from St. Louis, Missouri, or you were from, Norwalk, Connecticut, that phrase "I'm going south." In our local racing, when you said you're going south, that was pretty simple. You were going down for a dream. Leaving your wife back there. I love your wife. She's a wonderful lady. She helped you get hooked up here. So, technically, so we could do this. She had to really support what your dream was. Tell me about that time and that whole phrase of "I'm moving south."
And it worked out okay because at the same time, her mom and dad were fixing to relocate to Florida.
Ah,
So
95 south.
yeah, correct. Well,
Yep.
they sold their house. They put it on the market, sold it. Well, their house in Florida wasn't ready for another 6 8 months. So, for my benefit, they moved in with Lisa.
Wow.
So when I left, her parents came in, and
Mm,
you talk about support, you know. And once she moved down, and then the other guy come in with his money, and I was like, "What the heck am I going to do now?"
yeah.
So I started a fabrication shop. She was a travel agent by trade, so she was paying all the bills. I was working at an old Tiger Tom Pistones with a little fabrication shop and drove a couple of,
Grinding.
yep, drove a couple of cup races with I think it was Lindrow at the time, which is a guy still racing, and she supported me more than I could ever thank her, and racing is a tough business,
No
and
doubt. Yeah.
it is. If it wasn't for her, I mean, there was a few times I said, "Honey, let's go home.
Yeah.
I can't do this no more. Okay. My dream's over. Let's go. We'll go make memories in Connecticut."
Yeah.
And no, I think she said, she always said, I feel like something's going to happen. I feel like something's going to happen. Well, sure enough, Dick Moroso called.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Right there. Okay. Then in 1993, Dick Moroso chooses you to drive the number 20 Fina car at Talladega. And I'll let you finish it there. And was this your big break? But
Oh,
tell me
absolutely.
tell me about that race. And okay, go ahead.
So, I mean, I show up at Dick's shop, terrible when people lose children.
Yes.
I hope I'm never walking those shoes. Uh, so you don't ever know what you're dealing with when they have that. And Dick and Robbie were connected at the hip. So, anyways, he goes, "Hey, I got this deal." So I go to the shop, meet the one guy that's working on it, very talented, Dick Myers, and we're getting ready to go. And Moroso's like, "Make sure you call NASCAR and have them come put templates on that thing so we don't have no troubles." Okay, I mean, back in those days, those old long wood templates that
They'd
went
come
over
by
the
your
whole
shop.
car. Yeah. So we're trying to. The one old Dick, he was a master fabricator, and I called NASCAR and I said, "Hey, can you guys come check our car?" Yeah. Well, who do they send but old Chip Warren? He ended up to be the flagger. He was at the time just an inspector.
I liked him.
Yeah. So he comes rolling in, and old Dick Meyer, he had a funky hairpiece. Him and old Mike Fryer were close
Oh
with the same
yeah.
hairpiece. It was a little loose.
Time in the motor.
Yeah. And so I remember him, and his eyes get real big, and his freaking head is spinning around. I was like, "What the heck what's the problem?" Okay, so the guy checks the car. Yeah, it looks good. And he leaves. So what's the matter, Dick? He says, "Are you kidding me?" And then if you remember the back in the days, you used to cut the trunk lids and
Oh
get the
yeah.
swell in the thing.
Oh yeah.
Well, he was a master of that. So we did that. We go there. I think we qualified third, and I run second with old man Earnhardt, Schrader. I was like, wow. And I'm sitting, running wide open. I was, okay, this is great. And I remember going down the backstretch. I'm third in line, and there ain't nobody behind us. I said, boy, this is going to be a good day. And I look going down the backstretch, and I see Schrader's fingers are cupped out the window, right out the window net. I was like, what the heck is he doing? So I pull over a little bit, and I look, and I see Earnhardt's hand is cupped out the window.
Oh.
So I was like, what the heck? So I get back in line. I was like, suckers are cheating. I said, well, and then I start to sweat. I was like, oh, maybe they're scooping some air. Okay. So I go next lap. I go down the backstretch. Well, instead of sticking my my fingers out the window, I put my whole arm out. Well, that sucker wrapped around the window net. It was slapping me in the head. I was like, Jesus. I said, okay. I said, I'm not going to do that again. And we ended up finishing second. Uh, and it was an amazing day. And that secured a ride with the FINA people, for a few years later down the road.
Okay, so here we go. This is where you turn into a champion. It's taken us 35 minutes to get here. And this is the way life works. This was not overnight. This was a lifetime. You end up, getting, through the next couple years, you end up driving for Bass Motorsports owner Bill Baumgartner and crew chief Steve Birdie. You set the world on fire. You do it all. You win 15 races. You win the 1996, 97, NASCAR Xfinity championships. Now, to be technical, were those nationwide championships? What was the sponsor of the Busch Series?
Yeah, the Busch Series. The Swiss, I think 99 nationwide came in, I want to say.
Okay, so you were truly a Busch man. They had great trophies, didn't they?
Oh,
Busch.
my God. Good beer, too.
Okay. What do you remember about your time at Bass? I know later on, everybody moves on in life. I don't think that's necessary. We need to celebrate this 2 years of greatness that has you, where you're at today with the Hall of Fame. Once again, everybody, if you're listening up, Randy LaJoie, the man you're looking at, made big news over the last month. He was put on the ballot for the 2026 NASCAR Hall of Fame for all the reasons. He's a grinder, never gives up. Northeasterner, comes down Interstate 95, and we get him here to this year. Tell me about that incredible run with Bass Motorsports.
Okay, well, they had Johnny Benson. Johnny Benson.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
Johnny Benson won the 95 championship. Well, 95, after the Dick Moroso ran a couple years for Dick and Fina, I went cup racing. I got a deal to run after Bobby Labonte moved out of Bill Davis's. He needed a driver. Pontiac, I was hooked up with Pontiac at the time. They said, hey, why don't you go talk to Bill? Okay, I did. I said, okay, I'm going to go cup racing. And pretty much the worst experiences of my life. It was not a lot of fun. We weren't fast. We were slow. I remember they used to call my dad Tire Patch Don because he would read a tire like you do at short tracks. The tires are what meets the road, and they tell you a lot.
Camber gain, right front, the whole deal.
All that stuff. Well, I remember we were in Atlanta, and I just couldn't get comfortable getting in the corner. I mean, I was more comfortable 15 years ago in my first time there. And could never. So it was after happy hour, and I see my dad in a heated conversation with the crew chief and Bill Davis. And he come back, he goes, son, you're in trouble. So why? What's the matter? He says, these people don't know what they're doing. So why not? He says, I showed them the right front tire. He goes, you're using half of the right front tire. The other half's not even on the racetrack. He goes, how can you feel comfortable when your tire's not on the track? Well, then you ask the question, and you're like, well, that's a setup that this guy uses, and he's okay with it. Well, halfway through that season, I get fired. So my first year cup racing, halfway through the year, I'm done. And say, okay, now what? So luckily, I made a bunch of calls. Dennis Shoemaker from Maryland, he had that Duralube 64 car. Put me in that thing for the rest of the year, which was very enjoyable, ran well. That's where I got to know all of the Busch Series guys. Well, and then I spotted for Todd Bodine. So you get to watch. I spotted a deer for Todd, and when he was in that Fiddle Faddle car. And I learned a lot about the drivers. You learned a lot of who you can mess with. Who's going to give you a break. Who you can rough up, and they're not going to rough you up back. So that helped me. And that was all in memory bank. And Steve Bird called, they had Jack Sprague. No, at the time, yeah, they had Jack Sprague. Yeah, and they fired him, and they needed a driver for Rougemont, North Carolina.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'll go. Let's go. Well, we went up there, and I never met Bill or his family. I'm getting ready to get in the car before the race, and he comes in. He's smoking a pipe. He goes, "How you doing?" "I'm Bill." "Good, good. Wife, kids?" "Yeah, great." He goes, "You know I'm going to fire you after this race." I said, "Yeah, okay. You want to put it that way? That's okay." So I said, "Well, do you matter what this thing looks like when I come back?" He said, "Not really." So we ended up getting spinning out early, making up a lap. I probably passed every race car on the track once or twice. And he was hoarse at the end of the race. He said, "Randy, that's the best race I've ever seen." He said, "If you ever need a job, you need to call me." It's okay. So away we went. Well, that was 94, 95. Midway through the year, I needed a job.
Yeah.
So he was my second call. First call was the lawyer. Second
Oh.
call was to him. I said, "Hey, Bill, I need a job." He goes, "Well, I'm going to need a driver. Johnny's leaving the end of the year." I was like, "Wow." He goes, "But I'm also losing Lipton tea." I said, "Okay." I said, "Let me, this is 2 years removed from Moroso, and I had great relationships with the FINA people. Boy, what a great company they were. They did wonderful hospitality events with all the divisions, their oil and their fuel, their chemicals. So that they always were very good on how they brought customers to the track." Well, my third call was to the CEO of FINA.
Mm.
And he goes, "Man," he says, we're thinking about getting out of the sport. We're not having a good time. They were still Morosos. And he says, as a matter of fact, he says, at the end of this week, we're having our company meetings, and I'll probably announce there that we're getting out." I was like, "Oh boy." So I get my old phone deal out. He's, "Okay, where's FINA? FINA, FINA. Okay, here they are." I called everybody I knew in FINA. And one of the gentlemen, he was a big distributor for him down in Florida, Steve DeLuca. He started.
I remember that name.
Yep. He started with the Phillips 66. He had like 30 gas stations branded Phillips while he rebranded them all FINA. So
Oh.
he was very big into the FINA racing stuff. Called him. He called the others. The following week, the president of FINA calls. He goes, "We didn't get out, and we would love to come with you and Base."
Wow.
And that was a great 4-year run. I mean, it was good times.
And I want to say this, listen up, kids. It is a different time, but Randy, that's exactly the way I did it. People, we joke, how the hell did Kenny Wallace stay in the sport so long? Because I definitely didn't have enough talent. I sold my ass. I wanted to be a race car driver. And right there, what you did is what I did. That's the way I was able to stay there. And once again, if I was ever to headline this incredible conversation with you, is it you're a grinder and you never give up. Good work. I never knew that, Randy. That is badass. And you put yourself in a position to get with Base. You bring them the damn sponsorship, and then you deliver by winning 2 championships. So let me ask you a question, and I mean this in a positive mental attitude. For me, Steve Bird was a game changer because I didn't know what I needed because I came from ASA and I was used to coil springs, rack and pinion. I got down to those big old cars and I'm like, I'm chopping the corners because that's how we grew up doing it. And I was chassis the car the first couple of years, David Ift and me, and we had moderate success. But when Birdie became my crew chief, man, he set those cars up differently than I ever set them up. He used that string like a magician. Was I know you're a good driver, but was Birdie a game changer for you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the team was. It was, whenever I always thought, okay, Johnny Benson just wins this championship. What did he do? Okay, because you don't ever want to do worse than the guy. So I said,
Right.
okay, at least I want to equal what he's done. And Johnny won 2 races and the championship in '95. So okay, same team. I mean, all we did was change the seats, change the color of the car. And Billy Nazowitz, the former Richie Evans crew chief, car builder, and I've known Birdie for a long time. I met Birdie probably when I was 12 years old, when he was up
He
north
was with
racing
Bob
mountains.
Johnson.
Yeah, because he worked with Bob, and then before Bob, he was a crew chief for the traveling man Pete Fiandaca, number 135.
As Birdie would say, Peter Fiandaca.
Yeah.
Peter.
And so I've known him for forever. He worked for Moroso when they won the Dash championships and the Busch championships. So I was okay. This is good, and we had a great relationship. We all got along. Well, we come out of the box and we win 5 races in the championship. And we're like, wow, okay,
Badass.
yeah, well, okay. At the time, you think it's going to last forever, and then next year we did the same thing. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I mean, we weren't changing a whole lot. Well, that was a problem because we weren't changing a whole lot. And then we had this kid called Dale Earnhardt Jr., Matt Kenseth. Those guys came in with total different thinking. So instead of winning the championship, we run 3rd. And then the next year you run 4th. And it's getting harder and harder to compete. And you're like, what the heck is going on? I'm not changing this thing. And that the race team and Birdie, it seemed like the longer we went, the more issues we had. It was like, okay, because somebody has to 24/7 this thing with nothing but racing. If you don't pay attention, somebody else is. And that hurt us in 98, 99, the last couple of years with those guys.
Yeah, so I believe that's competition, and that's you and I are of age now. When we look back, that's just the way it goes. And well, I'm happy I'm going to be 62 years old, and you look good for 63. You had a hell of a journey, and once again, everybody, Randy LaJoie's on the ballot for the 2026 NASCAR Hall of Fame. But you're right; it's not a bed of roses. I want to talk about what I think. Now, this is my opinion. It's all about you, Randy. But 1999, you win the Napa Auto Parts 300 at Daytona. Was that the biggest win of your career, or if not, what was the biggest win of your career?
Well, we got 3 Daytona wins. 97 with the Fina car,
Yep.
which was awesome. And then we put the thing in the corner, covered it up, and we're going to go to Talladega. Okay, we won Daytona, we'll be good. I think we run 15th at Talladega, so we didn't do that good.
Yeah.
Well, 99, I go work for James Finch,
Right.
and the 1 car, and they've always had speed. We win that race, and you're like, wow, this is cool. And come back in '01 and win the race in the 7 Kleenex car. So I've won the Daytona race with 3 different owners. And that was a really weird weekend. I mean, here we won the Saturday race. Sunday, the whole family, there's probably 30 of us, are at an amusement park. I'm talking on the phone, to Timmy Fedewa and these guys. Hey, what's going on at the track? What's going on? Keep me updated. Okay. Well, on the ride home, Timmy called and then he said, hey, it ain't good with Earnhardt.
Oh no.
And then, so, okay, we lose Earnhardt. And I remember we were flying that Steve DeLuca would give us his house in Flagler Beach. Whole family would stay there. We flew out of Jacksonville. Well, here I am with my trophy, and I wanted to hide it because it was such a weird feeling to lose Dale. And then the somberness, oh my God, I mean, the people on the plane. And, you know, I said, hey, can we put this in the back somewhere? I didn't want people to know who I was because it just felt wrong because we lost the best we ever had.
Right. Well, I think the whole world, not just America, but Earnhardt was a man's man. We all wanted to be Earnhardt, you know, and you know, there's a song, "The Day the Music Stopped," you know, and that's the day that racing changed forever. It's never been the same. You know, Randy, that's something I was never going to talk about, but you know, they always say nobody's bigger than the sport. Man, it just seemed like Earnhardt was, because when we lost him, the trajectory of our sport changed forever. You know, he was our Michael Jordan. He was even bigger than Michael Jordan. I totally understand why you wanted to hide that trophy. It was one of your biggest moments. Now, let's go back to when I said the reason I thought the 1999 win at Daytona was big because you split with Bass, you're with another team, and you're like, take that, bitch. You know, it's the first race of the year.
Correct.
You know? So what do you think the biggest win in the Busch Series was for you? Or can you not, do you not know one?
It's tough to say because you never know when the next one's going to come.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know if I want to say if it's Memphis, which was my last one.
Oh, yeah, good one.
I enjoyed all of them, but just some paid better.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, everybody. We are going to switch gears. And we're going to start with a cliche. This is Randy LaJoie's second phase of his life. And if Randy does not get into the 2026 NASCAR Hall of Fame, and let me say this too. You know me, I'm very opinionated. No matter what happens, it is an incredible honor for you to be voted. So, period. Just no matter what happens, you're already a hero. But this second phase of your life, there's your T-shirt right there. This is the Kenny Wallace YouTube show, The Joie of Seating. Okay, now let me just say this. Darrell Waltrip said to me, the great Darrell Waltrip, he said, you know, I won all those championships, all those NASCAR races. And in the end, everybody knew me for being in the animated movie, The Cars. So here Darrell Waltrip did it all. His heart and soul was racing. But in the end, all the kids know him. They didn't know him as a race car driver. They know him as being on the Cars animated movie in the theaters all over America. It kind of reminds me of you a little bit. You're a champion, and you have changed grassroots racing forever. Sometimes we do things in life that is bigger than us. We would go to these local racetracks, and these drivers were getting killed. They're falling out of their seats. They're building these race cars, and they're not even paying attention to the damn seat. And here you come along with the Joie of Seating. I'm almost done bragging on you, but you start the Safer Racer Tour to improve safety in grassroots racing. I feel like this is a monumental. You're a race car driver, then you get thousands and thousands of drivers. You save their lives. You keep them safe. Now, you talked about seats a couple times, and I heard you. What made you go to seats after your career, or, you know, towards the end there?
In 1994, NASCAR came in and they said, listen, we're not going to let you use your fiberglass seat anymore. We're not going to allow fiberglass seats in NASCAR. I said, okay. I says, can I do it out of carbon fiber? They're like, no, we don't know what that stuff is. We ain't messing with it. I said, okay. Well, I brought it to the local builders building aluminum seats, and neither one of them wanted to try it. They said, that's too hard. I'm not going to do that. And well, Steve Richardson helped. I happen to live right next to him. We built one. It took us half the darn winter to build the thing. Try to make something round out of something flat. Well, he's like, Randy, I don't want to mess with these things. Well, it's okay. How do you make something round out of something flat? You have to stamp it. Well, my dad had come down, and he's driving around, and he goes to Old Carpenters, which is right across the street from the racetrack down there. They have stamping facilities, and he goes, hey, that guy wants to, he goes, I talked to that dentist, and he said he'll look at that thing. So bring it down to him. So I grabbed my fiberglass seat. I brought it down to him. He says, leave it here for a couple of weeks. He says, I'll see what I can do. Okay. A couple of weeks later, I go down, I pick it up. He says, Randy, he says, I don't want to mess with it. He goes, I really don't want to do any outside work. He goes, and you're looking at a $250,000 investment for the tooling.
Holy crap.
To do all this. And I was like, oh boy, okay. I can see we're not going to do this right away. So luckily I had old Dick Meyer. He would take that fiberglass seat and take pieces of aluminum and English wheel them. I mean, he'd go and he'd form it. Well, at least it fit me. But we had 30 pieces, and okay. I mean, as long as I needed one seat a year, I was good. We built two or three of them, and we played with how strong we should put them. We didn't know. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of sled testing. Well, at the same time, when we're coming up with this aluminum seat to try to make it comfortable and similar to the old Mark Donahue style that I was used to, NASCAR, we started paying attention to the seats, how strong they were, driver movement.
I want to interrupt you. I don't like to interrupt. I heard something. Mark Donahue style. Tell me, what are you talking about?
That seat, my dad was a racer, and I remember in 1971, we go up to Hartford, Connecticut to a trade show, car show. Mark Donahue was the Trans Am champion, an old blue 68 Sunoco Camaro.
Famous.
Yeah. Dad's looking at it. He goes, hey, he says, can I climb in there? And now my dad's been a champion for 3 years. And Mark's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So my dad sat in this guy's car and said, oh my God, this is beautiful. And Mark says, hell, he goes, I built them myself. I'll sell you one. So my dad bought one, and he put that in his cars in 1972. He made it a lot shorter because Mark had leg supports on it, head supports. He couldn't fit in the modified car. So he just kept cutting stuff off and moving stuff. And once he was happy with it, he didn't change the design of it. Just made it a lot smaller to fit in the modified car. So when I started, he said, hey, this is the seat you're going to use. Okay. So
I'll be darned.
Tells you how smart Mark Donahue was back in the day.
He drove for Roger Penske, one of the great racers of all time. You just taught me a lot. But I assume that seat fits your ass really well because I see the workmanship you put into it.
Yeah, and that was the big, it fits your hips. Your hips are really tight. I was putting a round plug inside of a round hole. Everybody else, you're sitting in a square milk crate. Yeah, so there was always room for your hips to move. It didn't matter. You get out and clean it, but there was pockets of dirt in the corners. So with that style bucket seat that I had, there was bunch more percentage of your body was in contact with the seat. So instead of being 80% contact in the seat in a different style seat, a rib supported seat, hell, I was 95 in contact with the seat because it wrapped my shoulders. And that was one of the things when I first started driving other people's cars. you would sit in their car, you know, the old rib supports. Okay, let's go. And I went to Dover with old Bobby Waywack, and he had one of those Banjo Matthews seats. And I already I won Dover. I won the Busch North race up there. So I knew how you drive down in the corner, and I knew all that. And I took that car and I drove it in the corner. And when I went down into turn one, I thought I was going to fly out the right side window. It was nothing to support me. And I was like, what the hell? I qualified. I wrapped a couple of lap belts around the door bar, around my chest to hold me.
Oh my gosh.
And luckily Schrader was there, and I took the seat out of his Busch car and put it in the guy's Cup car for that Sunday. But I just couldn't believe how much better the shoulder supports held you in the car. And through the 90s, NASCAR is starting to push. Hey guys, you know, let's get these things stronger. Let's do some sled tests. Well, Tom Gideon, who ended up working for NASCAR, he was working for Chevrolet. Dr. John Melvin, they were all hooked up with the ASA guys. And he said, hey, we want to test one of your seats. I said, okay. So I happened to have one, gave it to them. A couple weeks later, they come in, and it was bent. You know, I was like, okay, I bent it like that. I can straighten it out. And he's, well, let's watch this video. Okay. We put the video in, hit start. And at the time, I just started building seats, had one employee. And I watched that video. Now, here's this dummy sitting in my seat. Camera's straight down. It was side impact, 35 mile an hour. The center line went from here to over here. And it was violent. And I remember I thought I was going to puke. It just upset me. I was like, what the hell? So I shut the TV off. I go walking out, and they're like, where you going? I said, I'm shutting down. I'm going to kill somebody. And they said, no. He said, turn it back on. He said, you got a good one. Yeah.
Oh, no.
And
cool.
so the center line of the body moved a lot less, being held by your shoulders than your ribs. And that's, the light bulb went on. Okay. You know, at the time, you think you're going to drive forever. But of course, my dad's in this ear saying, what are you going to do here in a couple of years? You better start doing something. And you're like, okay. Well, that started taking my thought process from, okay, this might be something I can look into. Well, you know, here we are. We're still doing it 30 years later. And
yeah,
it's quite amazing, you know, Melvin and old Steve Peterson from NASCAR. Now it's John Padillac. The amount of knowledge they have on how the body works, it's insane. And you just don't think about the stuff until something happens. And then 2001, after Earnhardt, you know, yes, we lost the greatest we had, but I always wondered in the back of my mind, there was 5 guys before Dale. We didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. We
you know, it just didn't make no sense. But, you know, Big E made this sport so much safer.
Oh,
His legacy, not was he a good race car driver? You know, he saved my kid's life. He's saving these kids' lives every darn weekend. And that's a tribute to NASCAR for the amount of money they put in to find out why. And
I said it this way, and I said it on national TV when I was working for Fox. And when I said it, I was hoping everybody would understand it. Dale Earnhardt Sr. did not die in vain because people like you said, "Oh my God, we're literally racing." You know, we build this great race car and we put a milk crate in it. Let me say this. Step by step, you got to where you're at with the Joie of Seating. I want to spend about 5 minutes on when you started this Safer Racer Tour, what is the worst you? Now I would see it. I'm like, oh my God, this guy just spent $40,000 on a race car, and his seat is being held in. My buddy Nick Hoffman, Nick said, Herman, he said this guy had 1/4-inch bolts holding his seat in. This is like 3 months ago. What is? Are racers just that dumb? I don't mean to be mean, but are they that? They don't care about themselves, do they?
If you don't make them do something, they're not going to do it. And,
It's
and
crazy.
you know, we've probably all been there. I've practiced cars without fire suits, without helmets. What could possibly go wrong?
Not smart.
Like, what could possibly go wrong?
Not too smart.
And here, a quick story about, here I am, the seat guy trying to sell seats. 1998, 99, I get a call. Hey, come drive my Busch North car up here at Oxford, Maine. Okay. It was a double event. Busch North, NASCAR Modifieds. Jimmy Spencer's the reigning modified champion. He's got 2 brand new cars sitting there, 2 Hutter motors. I go over to the guy's car that I went to drive, and I look in it, and I was like, oh, boy. You know, the guy he fired was 145 pounds, and I'm not. So I opened up the ribs and jump in it to practice and go out there and practice. And boy, that thing hooked the bottom and went. I said, wow, this thing's fast. I said, well, I can't drive it. Seat's too small. Walk over to Spencer's. I said, Jimmy, can I take your seat out of your backup car and put it in and use it? He said, yeah, go ahead. Good. Do that. Finish second in the feature. I'm taking pictures. The modifieds are getting ready to pull around the racetrack. Jimmy's brother says, hey, get your helmet, get your gloves. Let's go. What are we doing, Eddie? They ain't got enough cars. So I entered you. $800 to start. So I'm all pumped up. I get over to the car. He's got the window net down. The thing's running. And he shoves me in the window net. I climb in the car. And I put the belts on. I'm hooking all up. I look at him. He's putting the window net up. I said, Eddie. He goes, yeah. I said, it doesn't have a seat. He goes, they're not going to check. And he clicked the window net.
Oh, that backup car you took the seat out of.
Yep.
Holy
I
crap.
tightened the belts, and now here I am in this modified. I haven't driven one in a few years. Brand new Hutter, I was like, oh my God. The yellow come out with about 10 laps in. Eddie Spencer was on the backstretch. He stopped the race. He's get off the darn track. He wanted me to be a starting part, but I was having so much fun. Yeah, without a darn seat. So that's one of the things I've seen crazy people do. Another time we're at Lanier or wherever.
That is nuts. That's actually nuts.
Yeah. Racing with Corey now. We go to a K&N race down there at Lanier maybe, or one of those racetracks. So I can just go walking around the pits and I'm looking. You know, now I'm starting to pay attention to people's safety. If I can help them, I'm going to give them some information because I'm in the NASCAR R&D. We're involved with that. I'm getting a lot of information. So okay, I don't want to keep it to myself. I want to help everybody. Well, I was looking at this guy's car and I was like, the seat belt is pop riveted in.
What
the
in the
lap
world
belt.
am I listening to?
And I was like, this ain't right. So I looked, sure enough, it's pop rivet. So the guy comes over. I says, tell me that's not pop riveted. He goes, it's a steel pop rivet.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, that's what racers,
Lord
that's
help
what
us.
racers do. I was like, oh my goodness. And it's crazy what I've seen. You know, I've been to over 180 racetracks. You know, that safer racer deal I come up with. Once I started getting out of racing, I was like, okay, there's 2 things I need this to do. One is it has to showcase my product because guys have never seen what I have. And 2, it needs to bring information to these guys and show them information they've never seen. Well, we had all those crash test videos and the old Johnny Benson video and him blowing out the seat. And people just don't see that. They don't see the sled test. And it opened a lot of people's eyes. And we're still not there on the short track series yet. It is still a very long way away. And it's sad that the industry must have to wait till they hurt people before they push safety stuff.
Randy, I firmly believe if the local racers are educated like you and I were, when we lost Earnhardt, we would have the safety meetings we all went to. Obviously, you and I were in these meetings. I'm not privy. I don't even pretend to know what you know. You know way more than anybody. But the safety meetings for us drivers is what I'm talking about. And I would see those videos and I would run back and I would tell my local dirt racing friends, oh my God, buddy, if you would see what I see, you'd spend, $5,000 on a seat because you'd take that seat from car to car for the rest of your life, most likely. Listen, Randy, we're at an hour and 12 minutes. I think we did it, my friend. Number one, I want to congratulate you on your 2026. You're on the ballot to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Congratulations. I hope you're voted in. If not, it doesn't even matter. Congratulations, because you are the ultimate racer. And now what you've done with the Joie of Seating. So you've done a lot. And if anything, you should be in 2 Hall of Fames. You should also be in the Pioneer Hall of Fame because you pioneered, what you've done for grassroots racing and making these boys straighten up and realizing how, dangerous they are. They need a seat. And you are as well known for your seat company as you are as a NASCAR driver.
You're like you said earlier
Go
about
ahead.
Darrell Waltrip saying, he's known as a cars guy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here, okay, I think I did pretty good racing, and people come here in the shop and they, there's a seat guy. I was like,
Listen here, you son of a bitch! I'm a
yeah,
two-time
I used
champion.
to do that stuff too. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and it's so cool. Now it's generational. Doing this stuff 30 years.
Yes.
I got the kids coming. First it was the dads. Now it's the kids, and it just shows that we are getting older, and we both have been very blessed. And that the reason I did that Safer Racer tour, because I don't care what day of the week you race on. If you climb into a race car and you're going in to have fun, you need to climb out. And there's enough information out there today that should really help you do that. And it's aggravating at times, and it's very satisfying at times. When you get a Monday morning call and a mom or a dad say, Randy, my daughter just flipped all the way down the backstretch, and he got out and he's playing out in the car. And you're like, whew.
Yeah.
It's something that you're very proud of, helping the industry, maintain. People just don't realize the less the driver moves, the better they're going to be.
Right. Okay, everybody, it's the same deal. First of all, I want to say I enjoyed racing with Randy LaJoie. I had a lot of fun with him, especially in my early days, because we battled a lot, and you're a great race car driver. All right, that's it. Randy, you got anything else, buddy?
Herm, I went by your old house the other day where the old go-kart track was, and some of the greatest memories are go-kart racing out there on Sunday with the bunch of us of it. Just, oh my God, just laugh and good time. And we've made great memories, that's for sure.
That's a whole nother storyline, Birdie. And I do want to say this now that, listen up, everybody. Now that Randy LaJoie said that, we're not going to go because it could be another hour. We spent a lot of time with each other. And he just mentioned, and Steve Bird, He told everybody at Hickory. I went to go to the bathroom at Hickory during a bush race. And in the bathroom was go-kart race at Kenny Wallace's house. I'm like, what the hell? Birdie did it. I said, Birdie, did you just invite everybody to my house? Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I'm like, you just invited everybody to my house. And we had the best time ever. I love Birdie. I see Birdie down in Florida a lot. He's so much calmer now, Randy.
Probably you are too, and I might be too. Yeah, it comes with a little bit of age.
Yeah. I'm happy to see Birdie calmer, though, because he was more jacked up on Sundrop than you and I were.
Sundrop? Was that in the middle of Light Cave?
Yeah. So I have a little bit of comedy because, the movie, I'm jacked up on Mountain Dew. Well, because Dale Jr.'s from the South, it's Sundrop. So I usually say jacked up on Mountain Dew or Sundrop. It means where you're living right now, right there, But all right, everybody, listen up. There he is, the great Randy LaJoie. His story is a cautionary tale. A cautionary tale means it's not a bed of roses, and he's the grinder. He made it happen. He's the ultimate racer. Until the next Kenny Conversation, we'll see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.